In this lesson, we're looking at IELTS reading, and I'm going to show you how to avoid skimming, scanning, finding keywords, and all those complicated methods. I have 8 practical tips for you to show you how you can improve your IELTS reading score. My name is Lara Ryan. I've been an IELTS examiner, an IELTS teacher at the British Council. I've been teaching IELTS for over a decade, and I am the founder of Complete Test Success. Now, first of all, I just want to clarify that this lesson is suitable for academic IELTS and for general training IELTS because the question types are the exact same in both. Now, the first 4 tips we look at are to show you how to find the answers in an IELTS reading test. Now, most IELTS teachers will tell you to read the questions first, but what I've found is that there's too much information to retain. We'll end up forgetting most of what we've read anyway, so we're not going to do that. Also, in the IELTS reading test, there are 3 passages. You're going to start with the first one because that's the easiest and you'll get most answers correct there. So tip number 1 is to start by reading the title. That will give you an idea about what you're getting yourself into. But there are occasions where there is no title, and if that's the case, you just skip to tip number 2. Tip number 2 is to read the first paragraph. Now, you're not going to skim or scan. There is no other strategy or special way to read it. You just read it like you normally would when you're reading a newspaper or a book or whatever else. Now, of course, you only have 60 minutes for the IELTS reading test, so you want to read it as quickly as possible. But where a lot of IELTS students go wrong is they try to read it even faster than possible. And what happens is they get to the end of the paragraph, they have no idea what they just read, and it's completely useless and a waste of time. So read as fast as you can, but not faster than that. Now, during the IELTS reading test, you will get distracted. So it might be another candidate making noise, or perhaps your mind just starts to wander. Now, when this happens, usually your eyes will continue to follow the text, but your mind doesn't actually process or take in any of the information. So when this happens, don't worry, it will happen. Go back to the place that you remember reading last and just continue as normal. Now, a lot of people have a habit of moving their lips while they read, so they do something like this. If you do that, you need to stop, because what it's doing is it's slowing down the speed that you read to the same speed that you speak, which should be slower. So if you have that habit, make sure to stop now and don't wait until you're in the IELTS reading test until you try this. Also, to increase your reading speed, you can simply move your finger across the bottom of the line that you're reading because that helps your eyes to focus and they can actually move faster across the words when you do that. Now, besides helping you with reading, I also have free live feedback lessons for speaking and writing every week, so make sure you join those with the link in the video description. Tip number 3 is for when you finish reading paragraph 1 and you answer any questions that you can. So you simply make your way down through the questions and any information that was in paragraph 1, you will write down the answer next to the question. As you make your way down through the questions, you will find that there are some you can answer with 100% certainty. So you simply write the answer next to the question. But the problem is there will be some questions that you think you found the answer to, but you're not 100% sure, and maybe you will find the answer later in the text. So instead of just writing the answer, we're going to write the answer you think is correct with a slash next to it. And the slash will help you remember that you need to read that question again as you make your way through the rest of the paragraphs. Now, with this strategy, we're going to read through the questions every time we finish a paragraph. So let's find a way to reduce the number of questions we need to read every time. Now, first of all, obviously, whenever you find the answer to a question and you're 100% certain about that, then you don't need to read that question anymore. But there are also some answers that appear in the same order as the questions, and we can take advantage of that to reduce the number of questions we read after every paragraph. So this is one set of questions where the answers appear in the text in the same order. These ones are called true, false, not given questions. And what you'll find is that the answer to question 1 is nearest to the top of the passage. The answer to question 2 is somewhere below that. The answer to question 3 is somewhere below that, and so on. Now, how we can take advantage of this is that we only read the question at the top. And if we find the answer to that, then we can read the second question. If we find the answer to that, we can read the third question, and so on. So we're only going to read the uppermost questions until we found those answers. However, what I would suggest is just to go one ahead. So if I'm currently looking for the answer to question 4, I would also read question 5. And the reason for that is if I find the answer to question 5, I do know that I've already missed the answer for question 4 somewhere, and I can start looking upwards from the answer to question 5 to find the answer for question 4. So as you can see, for question types like true, false, not given, where the answers appear in the same order as the text, we don't need to read all the questions every time. So let's look at what other question types also have the answers appear in the same order. This question type is called yes, no, not given, and these also appear in the same order. We also have sentence completion questions like this, multiple choice questions like this question type, which is called matching sentence endings, where we need to finish the sentences 20, 21, and 22 with one of the correct sentence endings from A to G. And finally, we have this question type, which is called short answer questions. And there are other question types in the IELTS reading test as well, but for those, you're just going to read each question after every paragraph. And then tip number 4 is once you've finished all the questions, you go back and read the second paragraph, repeat the process, go back, read the third paragraph, and so on. Then once you finish all of the paragraphs for passage 1, you move on to passage 2 and do the exact same thing. All of the tips so far have been showing you how to find the answers in the test, but the rest of the tips are showing you how to improve your scores. So tip number 5 is to use reliable practice tests. While you're preparing for the IELTS reading test, you will definitely need to complete practice reading tests. But if you use unreliable practice reading tests, that can cause confusion. There will be question types that aren't found in the real test, and the level of difficulty will not be the same. So you might think that you're capable of a higher score, whereas if you were using reliable practice tests, you would know exactly what score you're going to get in the reading test. The only way you can be 100% certain that you're using reliable practice tests is using the ones published by Cambridge. I would recommend that you purchase at least 2 of these so that you have enough practice tests to get you to the score you need before you do the real IELTS test. So with this series, they have books numbers 1, 2, 3 and 4, but they're the old format of the IELTS test, so don't purchase or use these ones. Then in books 5 to 10, you will find 4 academic reading tests and 1 general training IELTS test. So if you're doing the general training test, that's not the best purchase for you. Then from books 11 onwards, Cambridge has published 1 version for academic and 1 version for general, so make sure you get the one that you need for your IELTS test. Tip number 6 is to do 1 practice reading test. And the reason that I emphasize you do just 1 is because I've met hundreds of IELTS students who do 1 practice reading test, followed by another, and they all have the same story, is that their score is not improving. Now, when you first start doing practice reading tests, take your time. If it takes you 2 or 3 hours to complete a practice test, that's completely fine. You need to get familiar with the test format, the different types of questions, the different instructions that come with the different question types. So give yourself enough time to just get familiar and don't rush yourself in the beginning. Once you start to get the score you need in your practice reading tests, then you can push yourself to complete them in 1 hour. So every reading test has 40 questions, and you can calculate your band score by counting up the number of correct answers you have, and then checking this table to see what band score that equates to. You'll see that academic and general training reading tests require a different number of correct answers, and that's because the texts in general training are easier, so you're required to get more answers correct for the equivalent band score. Now, I have more IELTS lessons coming up, so make sure you subscribe to my channel and like my page so that you don't miss those. Tip number 7, and this is the most important one, is to analyse every incorrect answer from your practice reading test. Now, this is the key to improving because you can find out what you did wrong and take action on that mistake so that you don't repeat the same mistake in your next test. Now, I would advise that you analyse your practice tests as soon as possible after you completed them, because a lot of the information you're looking for is the things that you were thinking and the things that you did. So the more of that you remember, the better you will analyse your mistakes. Now, some mistakes that you make will be related to not completing the test properly. So perhaps you didn't copy the spelling correctly from the text, or perhaps the question said one word and or a number, you put 2 words and or a number. So something relating to not reading the instructions or not reading the text properly, those things you can simply remember and avoid repeating those mistakes in subsequent practice tests and inevitably in the real IELTS test. Then you will have some incorrect answers because you didn't understand the text or you didn't understand the question. And if that's what's stopping you from getting your IELTS score, you need to be very, very honest with yourself and you need to improve your general English level. If you try to find a way to avoid that or you try to find an easier way to find the answer, it's not coming. If you don't understand it, you're not going to be able to get the score that you need. To help you with that, you can follow my vocab and grammar improvement strategies. The links are in the video description. And tip number 8 is to do another practice reading test. Now, of course, you don't do this until you've taken all the necessary action on the mistakes you found in tip number 7. Once you're happy that you've made the improvements you need to make, do another practice reading test and repeat the whole process. And finally, let me know in the comments which tip are you most surprised about.